This video is not about motivation, it's about why the system stopped working. Modern men are falling behind, and before you assume what this means, let's slow this down. This is not about laziness, this is not about intelligence, and it's definitely not about men suddenly forgetting how to work. For decades, men were told that effort was the deciding factor, that discipline was the answer, that if you showed up every day, stayed focused, and followed the rules, life would eventually reward you. That belief shaped identities. It shaped choices. It shaped what success was supposed to look like. And for a long time, that belief worked. But something quietly changed. The rules shifted, the reward shrank, and the effort stayed the same. Modern men didn't stop working, and they didn't lose ambition. They didn't suddenly become weaker. They are falling behind because the system they were trained for no longer exists in the same form. And the most uncomfortable part of all this is not the struggle itself, it's the silence around it. Because when modern men fall behind, there are no alarms, no emergency conversations, no sense of urgency. Just an unspoken expectation to adapt quietly and carry the weight without asking questions. Before this turns into something it's not, we need to be very clear about one thing. This is not an attack on women. This is not about blaming anyone, and this is not a story about victims. This is about incentives, about expectations, about how systems quietly shape behavior without asking for permission. Because systems don't respond to emotions, they respond to structure. For a long time, the structure was simple. Men were taught that stability was the goal, that consistency was the path, that responsibility would be rewarded. Go to school, get a job, work your way up. That formula wasn't perfect, but it was predictable. Men built their lives around it. They delayed gratification, they accepted pressure, they traded time for security, and in return they expected progress. Not luxury, not shortcuts, just forward movement. But slowly, that movement stalled. The same effort stopped producing the same results. The ladder didn't disappear, it just became harder to climb. And yet, the expectations never changed. Men were still told to push, to be patient, to trust the process, even as the process itself was being rewritten. Here is where the contradiction becomes impossible to ignore. Today, modern men are expected to do more than ever before. They are expected to earn more money, to stay competitive longer, to constantly upgrade their skills, and to take risks in an environment that punishes failure more harshly than ever. At the same time, they are owning less. Housing prices didn't just rise, they detached from income. Education didn't just become expensive, it became uncertain. Even basic stability now requires levels of effort that would have been considered extreme just a generation ago. This creates a very specific kind of pressure. Not the pressure of challenge, but the pressure of compression. More responsibility, more expectation, more risk, with less margin for error, less upside, and fewer second chances. This is why motivation alone stopped working. You can't mindset your way out of a structure that reduces your room to move. When effort increases but outcomes flatten, people don't become lazy. They become exhausted. And exhaustion slowly turns into disengagement, even in people who still care deeply. That's not weakness, that's what happens when the cost of trying keeps rising while the reward quietly shrinks. Every system creates winners, even when most people feel like they're losing. And this is the part that almost never gets discussed honestly. When modern men fall behind economically, there is no emergency response. No breaking news, no national alarm, no serious conversation about what went wrong. Because men are still expected to absorb instability quietly. They are expected to adapt, to adjust, to carry pressure without slowing the system down. In many ways, they become the shock absorbers. When costs rise, they're told to work more. When opportunities shrink, they're told to compete harder. When systems fail, they're told to be resilient. Meanwhile, the system keeps moving forward. Certain groups benefit from this imbalance, institutions benefit from predictability. markets benefit from compliance, and systems benefit when pressure is redistributed downward instead of questioned upward. This doesn't require a conspiracy. It doesn't require bad intentions. It only requires silence. As long as the pressure is absorbed, there is no urgency to fix anything. And that is why the discomfort persists. Not because no one sees it, but because the system still functions as long as someone keeps carrying the weight. So what usually happens next is predictable. When progress slows down and pressure increases, the focus shifts away from structure and toward individuals. People are told they didn't try hard enough, that they made the wrong choices, that they picked the wrong path, the wrong degree, the wrong timing. This explanation feels simple, and that's exactly why it spreads, because blaming individuals is comfortable. It avoids uncomfortable questions about systems. It avoids asking who designed the rules and who benefits when those rules stop working for most people. But history tells a very different story. Groups don't fall behind because they suddenly forget how to work. They fall behind when systems evolve faster than expectations. This has happened many times before. The rules change quietly. The rewards shift slowly, but the instructions stay the same. People keep doing what used to work long after it stops producing results. That gap between expectation and reality creates confusion first, then frustration, then silence. And silence is powerful, because silence allows outdated systems to survive longer than they should. Right now, many modern men are living inside that gap, still following instructions that were designed for a different economy, a different cost structure, and a different set of rewards. Not because they are incapable of change, but because no one clearly explained that the game itself had already moved. At this point, there's always a counter-argument. Some people will say that men had it easier before, that this is just entitlement, that other groups struggled too and still do. And on the surface, that sounds reasonable, but it completely misses the point. This conversation is not about comparing suffering. It's not about ranking who had it worse. And it's definitely not about nostalgia. It's about alignment. It's about whether the system still rewards the behaviors it actively promotes. Right now, there is a growing mismatch. Men are encouraged to work harder, to be more disciplined, to invest more time and energy into their careers. But the outcomes no longer scale the same way. Effort used to create momentum. Now it often just maintains position. And when effort stops leading to progress, people don't suddenly become entitled. They become cautious. They delay decisions. They avoid risks. They disengage emotionally. Not because they don't care, but because they no longer trust that the system will respond fairly. Ignoring this mismatch doesn't make it disappear. It simply widens the gap between what people are told to do and what actually works. Here's the part most people never want to slow down and think about. The system does not care if you feel confused, frustrated, or left behind. It doesn't respond to anger. It doesn't respond to motivation, and it doesn't respond to blame. Systems only respond when incentives change. That's why shouting louder rarely fixes anything, and why blaming yourself quietly drains you. When effort no longer leads to progress, the problem is rarely effort. It's alignment. Effort without alignment always feels heavier than it should. And this is where most people get stuck. And they keep pushing harder inside a structure that no longer rewards pushing. Not because they are weak, but because they were never told that the game itself had already changed. This is not a call to give up, and it's not a promise of easy answers. It's an invitation to stop fighting blindly and start understanding the structure you're moving inside. Because if hard work is no longer enough, then the real question becomes unavoidable. What actually moves the system now? In the next video, we're going to talk about why education stopped being a guarantee, who benefited the most from that shift, and why so many people were never warned.